In today's episode, we have with us Kabrina Ashley, who is a storytelling expert. She is a whiz at telling stories with organic content, building six-figure businesses with her clients in just 90 minutes of content creation a week. So stay tuned. If you want to build a legitimate, profitable online business without shiny objects, without the hypey gimmicks, and without the stress and overwhelm, if you want to make more money without having to be present online all day, every day, pumping out content that nobody sees and hustling DMs to generate leads and sales, then this is the place for you. Welcome to the Digital Trailblazer podcast, your online business university, where you'll learn how ordinary people start from ground zero with no influence, no email list or audience to sell to, and no business or marketing experience, and go from working 9-to-5 jobs to building successful 6- and 7-figure online businesses and all the steps in between. Learn the strategies that worked and what didn't. Learn the mistakes that they made and how to avoid them, and then learn their plans for scaling their businesses and taking things to the next level. All so that you can build your business faster and easier and make more money without sacrificing the things that are important to you in your life. I'm your host, Leah Ray Getz, and with me is my husband, Todd. Now, let's get to it with today's guest. Welcome, Digital Trailblazers. Welcome, Kabrina. We are super excited to have you with us today. Go ahead and give a little context to our audience. Give them some background on what you do and where all this started for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So from the very beginning of all of this, I never thought that I would own my own business. I came into this going, okay, I'm going to go into corporate. I'm going to be one of those big corporate people, and that's going to be my baby. And then I ended up finding out that I was pregnant and had a real baby, and then had this idea of like, well, what am I supposed to do now? Childcare is very, very expensive. So after having worked at Disney, been training cast members, writing the pamphlets for them, and working with that team, I was like, well, of course I'm going to go back to corporate life. And as I started to do things from home, I started to get asked to help people tell better stories because I was pulling in my marketing background as well as what I did at Disney into marketing and into emails, and how do we actually create a customer journey that gets people from A to B. And what seemed very apparent to me as somebody who loves snarky and fun brands that I followed for years and kind of dissected that way, people were going, how do you actually get people from, hey, I saw you on Facebook or Instagram, to, hey, here's my hard-earned money for that thing that you were talking about?
Absolutely. I think that there's a big gap there, or there's a big step, and a lot of people get stuck. Like there are tons of people in the online space. They're struggling to even come up with what to put out for content, period, and they're it's like pulling teeth to create anything. But I've seen even more that are creating content, and sometimes massive amounts of content, but they're still not really generating leads. They're not expanding their reach, and they're not making sales. So what's important here to actually not have that giant gap and have all that effort actually lead to the revenue you're looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. And so the first thing that I want people to kind of think about, because when we think about getting a following and earning money, I can tell you that most of the brands that I work with are 3,000 followers or less on any given social media. And the thing is that we want targeted followers. We don't want just any followers, because especially with influencers and brand deals and things like that, we're seeing these big brands come after creators and entrepreneurs that have 10, 15, 20,000 followers, thinking that if I have them do this brand deal, then all these people are going to come into my business. And so as smaller creators and entrepreneurs, we've adopted that idea as well. Instead of saying, if I had 1,000 people who followed me and loved me and engaged with me, I would have a very successful high 6 figures to almost 7-figure business very easily. And so finding people that are engaged is the number one thing that we want to do. So when we're creating content, we want to make sure that people are engaging with that content, and it's not just there for frill, because we get caught up in these numbers of, well, if I post to this platform 6 times a day, if I'm constantly engaging, if I'm always on it, and then people are coming to me and going, well, how are you, a single mom with 5 kids, running a full-time business, and still have time to go do all the weird things that you are posting about? And it's because I learned early on, I can't and do not want to be chained to my desk. because I didn't start a business so that I could create my own 9 to 5 and 5 to 9 in the background. I wanted to create a business that created freedom, which is, from what I've talked with most entrepreneurs, is their goal. They don't want to be in this all of the time. So engagement and creating content that really hits home at the very beginning is what you need to focus on.
Easier said than done, I think. So how do we make sure that we're actually creating content that people really receive and engage with?
We have to realize that we're experimenting all the time. So one of the things, if you've never heard of the Savannah Bananas, the person who runs it, his name is Jesse Cole. Amazing books. Definitely go check him out. But one of the things that they do for the Savannah Bananas is they try 7 to 10 new things every single game. And here's the thing, is only 3 to 4 of those hit. And the other ones are flops. And so knowing that you're going to be experimenting, especially at the beginning, a ton. And it's going to feel like, oh my goodness, I failed again. Oh, hey, that didn't work. Oh, that only got 200 views on TikTok. And then all of a sudden you'll have something that you put out there that you're like, this isn't going to do well, but I just need to get this out of me. And you're like, oh, that's the thing that went viral. And so then going, okay, what was the difference here? Taking the pieces of what that content that didn't hit had and say, what was I doing here that I wasn't doing here? And what was I doing in the one that hit that I wasn't doing in the other ones? A lot of the time we find that it's actually authenticity. And I know that that's kind of a bastardized word at this point, unfortunately, because of the fact that everybody's like, be authentic, be yourself, do all these cool things. Yes, and you have to also be authentic in your authenticity, which people tend to lose because they want to show this beautiful Instagram-worthy side of themselves, when really it might be, today really sucks and I don't feel like I've gotten much done. But let me walk you through the things that I did get done so that you can see that it's not always sunshine and rainbows in my business. If you run a store and you're like, hey, we were hoping for 15 more people for foot traffic today, but here's the cool conversations that we had in the midst of that. And so saying, hey, here's the thing that's happening, good or bad. And if it is bad, finding a positive light to spin it so that you're not always going, this sucks. Because it's really easy to fall into that when you start to really try and lean into authenticity. Because when we try and flip from Instagram worthy to authentic, it's easy to just go completely different on that pendulum and go, well, everything sucks and my dating life is terrible and we didn't get enough customers today and if people would just like more of my stuff. And that works at the beginning until your customer base and your followers start to go, but this is not how I want to feel when I'm looking at your content. I want you to be real with me. And you have to think about this like your best friend. If your best friend calls you, let's say you talk every day for 10 minutes, and they went, oh my God, my life is so amazing, and I'm doing all these cool things, and every day, one after another, you're going to go, I wonder if their life is always fantastic. But then you talk to another friend who's also friends with this friend, and they go, yeah, that's not at all what's happening. And that's what we're doing in the online space. We're going, trust me, I'm being authentic. This is awesome. And then one day we show up and we're like, actually, everything sucks. And so finding a balance between that. And so how I like to think about this is think about it like a membership level. This tends to work with entrepreneurs, especially because we're like, oh yeah, we can sell memberships. No big deal. We've been a part of a membership. We've created our own, anything like that. So for people online, what amount of you do they get? Obviously, they're not going to get the, hey, you can call me up and have a conversation with me at midnight when you're going through a life crisis kind of membership. But what does that look like? And then thinking about that in every other relationship in your life. Because just because I talk about storytelling and marketing and customer journeys, this all relates back to how we do everything. It's that how you do one thing, you do everything piece. So finding a way to say, this is how I interact with my people. This is the kind of information about myself and my personal life that I give them. Some of my clients don't want to talk about their kids and they don't want to put their kids online for their own reasoning or for the respect of their children or for whatever that they are thinking that through and going, what does that look like for me? Do I want to do that? Because I've accidentally created 5 content creating monsters. I don't get that luxury. My kids are like, we're going to have a YouTube channel. And so I had to struggle with how much can you say in this? And so when you start to explain this to a child of this is the kind of person that I'm going to be here. It's not a different person. It's a different membership level that people get it.
I like that. So level of access, essentially.
Exactly.
Do you have a specific structure that you find when it comes to storytelling that really works when you're creating content, or even when you're, doing a webinar or VSL? Like, do you have specific structures that you follow, or what does that look like?
Yeah, so we can go over one of my favorite ones. It's actually called parallel language. And so what you're going to want to do is you can think about the story that you want to tell, or you can think about something that you want to relate it to. I love relating stories that people every day happen. Stopping at a light, your kid having a blowout, you forgetting to pack your lunch, things like that, because it's something that all of us have done at one point or another. And so then I can take that story and say, I use ketchup in the refrigerator, for example. Everybody has a bottle of ketchup in their refrigerator. It's always on the second shelf behind the milk, and there's always one person in your family who can't find it. So now I've given you 3 different things that I'm going to parallel over to the story that I want to tell. This is sometimes how we see our clients feeling about us. They know that they want this one thing, which is the ketchup, but they can't seem to find it. And it feels to us like they're that person in our family who you're like, I'm right here. I'm putting all this stuff out into the world. Why can't you see me? And it's not because you're not there and they don't want you. It's because they don't know where to find you, because we've hidden ourselves behind something. So now I've created this story that, one, puts me as an embed into somebody's life. So the next time that they see that bottle of ketchup, they're going to go, oh yeah, that person was just talking about that. And then they start to remember the story that I told them. But I'm also driving home the meaning of my story to my people and going, well, how do I? Because that's the next question. How do I become the person who's the ketchup bottle at the front that people always know where I'm at? Because I'm either in a specific drawer or I'm in the side door, so that they're like, hey, this is who I go to for this specific thing. And so now I've created a narrative that takes me from one story and pushes me to the next story, which then becomes my call to action.
And do you have, because organic is your baby, since we're talking about content and we just brought up call to action, what call to actions do you feel like are working really well today, and even the frequency?
Yes. So you need a call to action in everything that you do. That does not mean that you need to be telling people to buy from you every single time. It used to be an 80-20 because I love the 80-20 principle. What I'm seeing work right now is more like a 70-30, 70% selling posts to 30%, hey, follow me. Hey, what are some, asking a question that engage people? Because you run a business. Of course, you're going to ask people to buy from you. So it makes sense that you're doing that 70 to 80% of the time, and that you're engaging the other 20 to 30% of the time, because we want to create a relationship with our people. And you might go through seasons when you're like, I'm not launching anything. I'm in a season of, most people go through this November, December after Black Friday. They're going, I'm not selling anything. I'm just trying to make it through the holidays and all of those terrible parties that I have to go with the family member that I don't like. We've all been there. So now we don't want to necessarily be selling anything, but we still want people engaging with us. So we can flip that and do 20% to 30% selling and 70 to 80% engagement. Because then, let's say at the beginning of the year, you want to start a new program. Then I've got all this engagement, all this excitement that leads right into that. So some of the best things that I've seen is when you say, I'm going to sit down at the beginning of the year and I'm going to map out my whole entire launch process or whatever I'm selling, whether you do launches or you're evergreen. And you're going to say, these are the main things that I'm going to promote at this time of year, this time of year, and this time of year. Once we've done that, now we can say, what kind of content do we need to create all year long? So if I know that I'm going to be promoting a course in quarter 1, I'm going to be talking about why you should do online learning, why it's different than going to an in-class thing. What's the benefits that you're getting from a college class, for example. And so I'm building up that narrative early on before I even mention that I am launching that course. So then people are like, oh yeah. So if you're like me and you're like, yeah, college is not exactly the best thing for everybody, unless you're going to be in these specific kinds of places, like a doctor or a lawyer, or somebody who really needs to go to college to learn how to do that. Most of us can agree that pretty much what we do during the day, we learned more on the job than we did going to school for it. And a lot of people feel that way. So as somebody who teaches marketing and storytelling, would you go to college for this? Maybe, because it's really fun. But you also probably will get more out of taking an online course than you will from taking a college course on this and spending $30,000 to $100,000 on it. So now we've got price juxtaposition in our narrative already. And so I'm building a case. You want to think about this like you are a lawyer. I'm building a case of evidence with the stories that I'm telling that are then building know, like, and trust along the way.
Genius. That's amazing.
Brands do this with us all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We see Coke, for example. They're embedding themselves into different things. You go to the movie theater, they have a partnership with them. You go to specific restaurants, they have a contract with those restaurants that they're only allowed to have Coke. So now you're seeing it consistently in these specific places. So if you go to those places enough, you're not going to ask for a Pepsi anymore because now you intuitively know that Coke is only sold there. So if I'm telling those stories and embedding myself into places, like I go to the movies and I get a Coke. I don't get a Pepsi because AMC doesn't sell Pepsi. And so now they've created this ecosystem that they have become the monopoly in. And so as a brand, that's really what you have to focus on, no matter how big you are. Because, for example, Procter & Gamble started out as soap. They had to tell a very different story when they first started than the story that they have to tell now about the company. And we could dig into that even further of now there's subsets of the company that tell their own stories that people don't even know that they're owned by Procter & Gamble. And what's the strategy behind those pieces? Because they're trying to separate themselves as that their own brand identity. And so when we start to think about the stories that we tell as our personality for a brand, and just like you wouldn't want somebody to look at you and go, oh, this person is X, Y, and Z when that's really not who you are, that's the same thing that your brand is wanting to do. But the only way we can do that is through the stories that we tell about ourselves. Because people don't know us. They don't know what the brand stands for unless we tell them.
Yeah, stories are such an important part of that marketing process. And a lot of people have heard that they need to tell stories, but they don't really do it the right way. I remember specifically the first time I really saw this done effectively was when I went to this mastermind, and there was a bunch of 7-figure earners there, multiple 7-figure, 8-figure earners. And I sat down at a table with one, and it was kind of this brainstorming thing where people were asking him questions and he was giving answers. I remember I didn't ask a single question, but I was listening to the other questions other people were asking. And I remember specifically every single answer he gave was a story. And it wasn't necessarily a long story, but it was a story. And I remember thinking, well, that's genius, because I remember everything he said, like every answer he gave, I remember it. And I remember the story that was connected to it. And he did it so well. I'm sure that's why he was like an 8-figure earner, you know? And I know with what we do as coaches, course creators, online business owners, a big part of this is, we learn how to do a webinar or we learn how to do a VSL. And inevitably a part of that is telling our own story. And this is where I see a lot of people just getting it wrong. And when they get to the story part of their presentation, it just drags on. It goes into these directions and into these little areas that who knows why they're telling it. And then at the end of the day, it's like a 30-minute portion of their presentation. And by the time they're done with it, nobody's left to see the rest of the presentation. So can you give us some tips on how to keep that story succinct and relevant and interesting for the audience?
Yeah. So I'm so glad that you brought this up, because everybody's like, here's the story you need to tell about your brand. And that's not what I want you to be doing at all. I actually want you to think about, why should people even care about this story? Because we're very self-focused creatures. So if I'm listening to a webinar, I'm on a podcast, any of that, nobody cares why I'm there. They're there to figure out what they can get out of this. So if I come to my story with that in mind, now I'm going to start paralleling things a little bit better, which is why I love the parallel model. Because if I'm telling you, hey, I worked at Disney, what does that mean? A lot of people will come up and go, oh, that means that you're good at storytelling because Disney's good at storytelling. So I'm borrowing that credibility from things that I've already done. So that's one thing that you can do, is borrow credibility from past things in your story. The other thing is you can say is, I did X, Y, and Z, which is why I'm passionate about helping you do A, B, and C. Because I learned blah, 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 that I've condensed it down for you. So now we're giving them a time thing of, I spent 10 years learning this, and now I'm going to do it with you in 8 weeks. So now I've got that time juxtaposition of, you don't want to take 10 years to figure this out. Let me just hold your hand and take you there. But that's all part of the story pieces that now I'm pulling together. And thinking about your story, like write it out or talk it out into your phone. I always tell my clients, if you're not good at writing, go for a walk, transcribe it, put it into Zoom, whatever your form of creating content and pulling it in is, and then stick it into something like ChatGPT and say, what are the most important parts of my story? And you could even say something like a prompt. This is a great prompt that we use, is pretend that you are insert your demographic of audience. And I want you to tell me what parts of this story would resonate with you and what you would find the most important based on, here's the problems that I solve for. Because then we're getting an outside view on what that means for them. The other way that you can do this, if you don't want to use AI, is to ask past clients. Why did you decide to work with me? What was it about working with me versus somebody else who does the same thing that was different, important, made you decide to make that purchase? Because now we're getting our words regurgitated back to us in a way that we can now take that and push it forward. After being a copywriter for years, that was always my number one advice for people, is listen to what people say and how they say it and the specific words they use. Because then I can just take that and regurgitate it back. Because that's just simply active listening. And if we can actively listen, we can actively storytell and create a conversation versus me talking at you.
Yeah. And the thing is, I think so many people don't even bother to ask that question, but it is so important. I know that when we're working with clients, one of the things that we try to do is we try to get them to take action fast and get that feedback as soon as possible with the intent of, hey, you might fail, it may not work, it may not be efficient right now, but the important thing is that we get that feedback. But that's scary for people. They want to do it right the first time, and so they spend all this time trying to get it perfect the first time, which you're never going to do, right? It's never going to happen because they think that for some reason they can skip that part of having to get that feedback from the clients. Like they think that the answer is already out there, somebody's already figured it out, and they can just copy somebody else's answer. And it doesn't work that way because, every brand is different, every business is different, your personality is different, even when you're selling the same thing as somebody else, right? Like we sell, we're a coach, right? We coach coaches and coaches. There's other people that do the same thing, but we've got a very different brand from them. And the things that we're hearing from our clients and the people that come in and buy from us are very different from the people that are buying from some other guru that's out there. And so it's important that you get those answers for yourself from your own audience, because that is absolutely going to help in your marketing. I know that the VSL that we've got running right now, it's super effective, but it took us a little over a year to get it to where it is right now because we had to get that feedback from our clients. We had, and the way that we did it was right on our sales calls. And so Leah and I would collaborate because she would do our sales calls and I do the VSLs and things like that. And it's like, okay, Leah, what are we hearing on our sales calls? What are they saying? What are the words that they're using? And so we took those and we put them right back into the VSL. And as soon as we did that, it was just 10 times more effective than it had ever been. So this whole idea of getting that feedback, I think, is just one of those gold nuggets that everybody needs to do.
Yeah. Well, and that's when you start to hear people go, oh, you're reading my diary. How did you know that I was just having that conversation? And it's funny that you bring up failure because this is a conversation that I have had just over the last week, 3 or 4 times with people, because of the fact that the school system sets us up for failure in the way that they teach us that failing is bad. You need a passing grade. You need to put in the work. You need to get it right the first time. There is only one test, and that's not how real life works. So then we become entrepreneurs. We get into the workspace, and we go, you're telling me I have to fail? I have to go do this wrong first? And that's why I come at this from experimentation. Because when we say it's an experiment, what's the hypothesis? This is what we think is going to happen. Then people go, well, I'm expecting there to be something that doesn't necessarily go to what my hypothesis is. So all of a sudden we've changed the mindset for people of this isn't failure per se, even though on any other plane it is. It's me trying something new, which is why when we go back to that Savannah Bananas example, picking 7 to 10 things that you're going to do a little bit different and say, hey, like for them, they're going to try 3 new dances. So it's one category of things that they're trying. And then they're going to try going and doing some kind of engagement with their attendees. And then maybe they'll try one other thing when they're creating content for their TikTok or Instagram reels. And they're going to see what works and what doesn't. And so the more that we can experiment, because we have the ability to move so much faster than a big organization, we have to take advantage of that. Because a big organization has a lot more red tape in order to try something new. So as people who can, if we can look at that as a really cool thing that we get to do, then it makes this so much easier of, oh, hey, I'm going to launch a 13-day challenge, which is what I'm about to start trying. It's not quite 30 days. It's not 7. It's somewhere in between, and just see what happens. And if it hits off and you try it a couple times, great. There might be things that you want to tweak. There might be things you want to add. There might be things you want to take away. I just got done with a 90-day challenge that I was like, that was fun, but it was way too long. But here's the things that I learned in the process of it. Here's the things that I'm able to tweak to now run it as something different.
That's awesome. So I want to circle back real quick just to something you said earlier when we talked about call to actions is the 80-20 or then the 70-30. In the selling call to actions, do you classify like call to action to a lead magnet or call to action to a freebie as part of the selling percentage?
I do actually. And the reason being is because so many people come into this space and they just want to hop into the DMs or get on Instagram and start promoting something. And it is the equivalent of going on a date with somebody and asking them to have sex with you that day. It just doesn't work. And so if you can think about this exactly like dating, and what do you want it to look like? What do you want that relationship to feel like? That's what your clients are looking for with you too. They want you to come in and they want to say, hey, let's get to know each other. That's them watching your content. And there's going to be a lot of lurkers. The lurkers are usually better than the likers anyways. We want to have the likers so that we know that people are engaging with us. But those people that are just lurking on the outside, they might follow you. They might like something here and there. But those are the people that are going to end up on a call with you. Once they end up on a call with you, they've already gotten a freebie. They've watched your content. They've seen how you talk. They know your tone of voice. And so now saying, hey, now that we're on a call together and you've seen all these things, thank you so much for engaging with me over these last however long. What does it look like to move forward in whatever it is, the promise that you're giving them? Now we can ask them to go on a second date with us. That second date can be them purchasing from you. And maybe that's a smaller product that then gets into a bigger product later on. So most people will start with something like a freebie. And then you get into the freebie. Maybe there's a tripwire there. Maybe there's a little course that's in the email. And so we're building that relationship over time. And it's not, this is why ads, although ads are amazing when used correctly. So don't hear that I'm saying never use ads and organic's the only way. Organic, the reason that you want to build up organic as far as you can until it flatlines is because I know that my messaging is working and I know that people want what I have. Once I know that, then I use ads as a way to put gas on the fire because then I can start to accelerate much faster. And you can use ads to test, but when we really are getting that organic piece, we know that our ads are going to work.
Yeah, and I think that's the way the algorithms work right now, today, that makes that more true than ever. Because in the past, like in the early days of social media, like the algorithm was really unsophisticated. You could keyword stuff things and get more reach with your content and things like that. Now, the algorithms are much more geared towards user feedback and positive user feedback, and they're much better at gauging what people are actually interested in. So I think you're exactly right as far as, if your organic content is doing well, then it's probably going to work really well as an ad too, because that's what the algorithms and the AI or, however you want to say it, that's what they're using to gauge whether your content is worth showing to more people organically.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's paying attention to who is paying attention to your organic things too. So if it knows that you're attracting in a specific kind of person, whether you set that or not, it's going to start pushing towards those specific people because we don't have the same capabilities that we did before all of the iOS changes. So now people are more in buckets than they are specific people. I honestly think that it's a little bit better now because now we have all of this technology of if I hover over a specific piece of content for too long, now it's going, oh, you must like that. If I engage with something over and over and over again, the same kind of content, it starts to show me those things, which has been phenomenal for curating my own content on my pages. So I have a totally different kind of Instagram than I do a TikTok. TikTok's very businessy, very all of these people that I want to follow that are business owners. And then Instagram is very much inspirational and memes and haha funny things because that's how I wanted to make what I was looking at. And it's always interesting to me when I get an ad that pops up because my Facebook is more business. So occasionally that will pop through on Instagram. And it's because of the fact that we have those different pieces, even though I'm not doing business things on Instagram, because it's all in Meta, they're seeing what I'm doing over here. So being aware of those different connections that are there and saying, what kind of people am I engaging with? Am I even engaging with the people that I want to be my clients? Because that's another question you need to be asking yourself. Now, I'm very much against the, hey girl, hey, get into people's DMs, stuff like that. But if I know that I, for like you guys, work with coaches, I'm going to go follow coaches. I'm going to interact with coaches. I'm going to see who's interacting with them. Not so that I can go and poach people, but so that I can go in and say, what kind of language are they using? Who are they following? What kinds of things do I need to be considering so that when they start engaging with me, I can engage back educated.
That's awesome. So I think a lot of people are quite curious about that whole 90 minutes of content thing a week. So walk us through that process. How do they succinctly, systematically produce content that doesn't take crazy amounts of time?
Yes. So the best way to do this is to do 7 lives a week that are 10 minutes or less. So we've got 60 minutes of content that we're actively creating. And then we're going to use that content and we're going to pop it into different short form video because we know that short form video is the thing that's popping off everywhere. So let's walk through this in a systematic way. Let's pretend we've done our 7 lives. Whether you pre-record these or not, I'm a pre-recorder because as a mom of 5, I've got 2 home right now that are sick. So you never know what your day is going to look like. So if your life is like mine, pre-record everything. So you could sit down and just batch everything for the whole entire week and schedule it. In a system like StreamYard, I use Wave and things like that. So now that we've got those pieces of content, now I'm going to utilize the AI systems that we have now. I personally use Minvo, and I can take my 10-minute video, put it into this system, and it will now transcribe it. It will cut it into different segments, and I only need 3 of them. So then those 3 30 to 60 second videos can be repurposed on TikTok, Instagram Reels, and YouTube Shorts. So now I've got 3 pieces of content going out every single day on every single one of those places from 10 minutes of content that I created for that day. And it is. And the thing is that a lot of the YouTube strategists that I'm friends with, they're like, you have to be on YouTube Shorts because that's where everything is. And it's because this whole TikTok debacle of, is TikTok going to shut down? Is it not? Probably not. But YouTube has positioned itself in a way that it is trying to pull all of the creators from TikTok over to YouTube because they see how powerful that is. We're seeing this with Mr. Beast with Amazon. These creators are now becoming bigger actors in every field that we're looking at. So YouTube's saying, okay, if we can start creating these people and pushing them up, more people are going to be watching YouTube. I don't remember the statistic off the top of my head, but I know that there's more people watching YouTube than I think Amazon. So Amazon Prime, Netflix, and Hulu together, which is crazy. My kids would rather watch YouTube than any of the streaming platforms that we pay for, which just boggles my mind because that was not how we grew up. We were like cable, and then we were able to cut the cord, and now we own 15,000 things that's more than cable, and they just want YouTube now. And so when we think about that, let's be at the place where everybody's watching things because we have the algorithm at our disposal. So if we know that we're talking to business owners, you're talking to somebody who wants to buy a purse, let's create content around those pieces that's short form that people can flip through. And then if you decide you want to start a whole entire YouTube channel and do all of those things, that's a little bit of a different beast than what we're talking about. That's going to take a little bit more time. But if you can create all the content that you need in 90 minutes or less, start there. And then you can say, okay, well, this feels good. Now I'm going to add on one more thing. Okay, I've got this down. Now I'm going to add on one more thing. So now you can say, okay, I'm putting these out to different places, but maybe I want to we're going to use that last 30 minutes of, I want to try something specifically on TikTok. So we've built in that experimentation time for us. I want to try this specific thing on YouTube. LinkedIn is my platform of choice. So I might want to give different content to LinkedIn than I would to TikTok so that they're getting a different membership level depending on where they're finding me at. So it's not like it used to be where you had to create different content for every single platform. You can create very similar content or the exact same content, especially when you're first starting out. Because the whole point of this model is just to get you out there, because we're trying to get you seen. And if we can get you seen, then people are going to start following you. Then people are going to start buying from you. And then we can add on all the other things.
I love it. This has been a great conversation, Kabrina. If people want to learn more about you, where should they head?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually have a completely free mini course that you can get at micdropmessage.com that'll walk you through different ways that you can tell better stories around your content and a couple extra models than the one that we just talked about today. And then LinkedIn and Instagram, you can absolutely always reach out to me there. I'm Kabrina Ashley on both platforms.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You've been listening to the Digital Trailblazer podcast. For show notes and information about today's guest, head to digitaltrailblazer.com. Now, if you love this episode, if you got some value, make sure you leave us a review and subscribe. And be sure to share this episode with anyone you know who could use help to build their business. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.